So today we got a question from a viewer who goes on to say, yo, Elliott, how does a person learn how to accept more? Like a skill. I want to get better at what they call acceptance. Do you have any idea by any chance? All this talk about acceptance, but what does one actually accept? How does one actually accept things? Great question, man, especially in a world that gives us options and we have preferences and there are things that we choose to accept and not to accept. And the things that we choose to accept usually fit in with our self-concept. And that's usually predicated on preferences. And that's always a way to maintain comfort. What we accept are those things that do not challenge. What we accept are those things that we're most comfortable with. The things that we don't accept are things that challenge our sense of self. It challenges our ego. It challenges the status quo. It challenges our comfort. So the question isn't so much accept or don't accept. The question really is, what is my self-concept? What do I believe about myself? And based on that story, based on the parameters I created for myself, based on the story that I've chosen to believe about myself, what will I allow my boundaries to expand, to integrate? Or what are my boundaries absolutely just stalwart, strong, and unmovable that don't allow the acceptance? Now, here's the thing. When we choose to accept the things that are within the boundaries of our self-concept, they're easy for us to accept because they do not require expansion. And expansion is always uncomfortable, right? Think about like a chick coming out of an egg, right? A little cute yellow chick who's stuck in the boundaries of an eggshell. In order for it to see the light of the world, in order for its consciousness to expand, it has to break that shell. And I've never been a chicken before. I've never spoken to a chicken before, but I would assume that a chick, the baby chick that's inside that egg is going to struggle a bit because there are a number of boundaries, right? There are the boundaries that are understood. Hey, I'm in this place. I'm comfortable in this place. All I know is this place. I've been growing in this place. And then there's the resistance. But something is pushing me to transcend this place. Something's asking me to accept this discomfort of the breaking of my shell so that there can be expanded awareness. And think about the awareness of the chick that's caught inside the boundaries of what it has created for itself versus the chick that can like walk around, that can fly around, that can peck and pick and make decisions with its eyes and with its beak about what it's going to eat and what it's going to do. There's a whole new level of freedom associated with transcending or accepting these boundaries for what they are and allowing life to take its course by expanding the chick's body so that it goes through the discomfort of breaking the shell so that it has this new awareness, this new life. It's very similar for us. What it is that you're facing right now in your life that you are challenged to accept, in many instances, are for your growth. I'd say in every instance, as long as it's aligned with the divine plan for your life, you are being asked to expand. You're being asked to grow. But we got to be able to get to a place where we can trust that, number one, that's the truth, that God is asking you to expand. But also, number two, we got to accept that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to require self-transcendence. It's going to require dying to ourselves, our self-concept, our stories, our strategies, the state that feels most comfortable to us. There's a scene in the gospel where Jesus is aware that he's going to be executed. And in that, there's a lot of resistance. It shows in his dialogue when he's in the garden and he's praying, he's speaking to God. He's saying, okay, this level of expansion that you're asking of me is tough. You're asking me to accept torture. You're asking me to accept my death. And in that, he begs, he says, look, God, if this is not from you, if this is not your divine plan, then take it away from me, please. But he says something else that is so important that ties that whole scene up. And it's, thy will be done. He says, Lord, if this is your plan, let thy will be done. So another thing that we see from the story in the gospel that is relevant to our situation is that God never asks us to expand, to destroy us and leave us hanging. The archetype shown in the gospel when Jesus Christ accepts the circumstance that he finds himself in is often referred to as the greatest love story ever told. In other words, in order for Jesus Christ to fulfill his worldwide mission, he has to accept a sacrifice that doesn't come naturally, that doesn't come easily, that is asking him to transcend the borders of even his flesh, right? Like oftentimes we're always being asked to transcend our flesh. The flesh is where we get the story, right? The story about who I think I am and what my preferences are based on past experiences. So that's all in the head. That's dying to the ego. That's dying to the thought body, right? Your ability to reason and to choose and to make decisions based on preferences. That part of you, which has been protecting you and protecting us for so long, that we have often given power to, meaning like we believe that because of these preferences, because of these choices, because of the force of my own will to make certain decisions, that our life is better. But I'm here to challenge that today. My challenge is that there's nothing that we can do to effectively, positively make God's will evident. Like it's going to happen. Like if you're supposed to have something, you're going to have it. If you're supposed to do something, you're going to do it. One of my teachers, when I was caught up in the same situation that you are right now, where I'm like, okay, what do I accept and what do I do? Told me, hey, Elliott, she told me a number of things that were very helpful in this circumstance. She said, number one, don't go looking for anything. Don't go trying to make anything happen. Let everything come to you. Specifically, she said, Elliott, don't reach for anything. Let everything come to you. Okay, fair enough. But what do I do, right? Because that becomes a question based on our self-perception that we usually end up asking. Well, what do I do? What do I do? And what I'm proposing is that the only thing we can do is get in the way. There's another story about a caterpillar that's becoming a butterfly. The caterpillar something starts happening to him. He's going through a transformative process. You could say that he's going into a dark pit because he's going to a dark place of transformation. And in that, he's being broken down and restructured inside the chrysalis. There's a story about how that chrysalis is designed in such a way that when the time is right, the wings will start growing, the butterfly wings will start growing, and it will push against the chrysalis. And a number of beautiful mechanical things happen when the butterfly is doing that, including the very restriction of the chrysalis squeezes fluid out of the fat body of the dying caterpillar, and then pushes it out into the wings of the butterfly. So it has to go through this struggle, right? The restrictive force and the struggle press against the body of what's becoming a butterfly, so that it can be a butterfly. But the story takes a wrong turn when a little boy finds the butterfly struggling to make his way out of the chrysalis, and instead of letting him go through the struggle, he starts peeling the chrysalis apart. And what he reveals is a misformed, a half-baked butterfly, a butterfly that God was putting through its natural processes in order for it to become what God knows is the potential for that butterfly, but it's interrupted, it's distracted, it's messed with in a way that human will thwarts God's will in that circumstance. A lot of times we're in places that we don't like to be. A lot of times we're in situations that we don't want to be. We don't want to accept it. And we do everything that we can to alleviate the pain, get rid of the pain. I don't want this to happen. And by doing so, it may give us the illusion that we are discharging charge, right? There's a fear inside, there's an anger inside, there's a confusion inside, and I can't handle it. I can't sit in the tension of that pressure, so I'm going to go relieve it. One of the ways that you might find yourself, I know I do oftentimes, in order to relieve the pressure, that's usually associated with ambiguity, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing exactly what the future is, not being patient enough for God to reveal what his plan is to me. I start taking action. I start doing things. So I go to the head, I go to the thought body, right? Which is a part of the body. Your thoughts are things. Your thoughts are, it's content, it's stories. That gets the opportunity to be challenged in this circumstance, or we use it to strategize ourselves out of the discomfort and to remain stuck in the place that we're at because of resistance. The heart also needs to be challenged because the emotions usually support the thoughts. Our thoughts are usually what we perceive first, but the first movements, the original movements, are in the heart, are in the body. The thoughts, the emotions give way to thought. So we have this uncomfortable emotion, and then we have these thoughts that strategize, that support us in overcoming that pain. And then we take action in order to actually reduce the pain. But just like the boy that rips the chrysalis apart, we're actually getting in the way, and we end up making things premature, creating just havoc by meddling, by interfering, rather than allowing God's natural timing and his natural process to bring things through. Now, with your question, acceptance, let's put this into some sort of like example that might make sense. So I am with a girl, right? So you're with this girl for many years. You love her, you foresee a future with her, but she decides to leave you. She wants something else. Now in that, we're immediately hit with boundaries and discomfort. Immediately we're asked to either resist or accept what's going on. And all we can think about is what we imagine the future will be without her. And the imagination that we have based on the fear of losing this person is based on lies. It's based on stuff that has already happened, so it's dead information. I mean, things have always been great. We've been together for 3 years. Can't it just keep going that way? That is a story that we're using in order to discharge the emotion of pain and fear and anger associated with the circumstances. So we start taking bits and pieces of the past relationship, what things were. Then we take bits and pieces and we take that and we project it into the future, and then we construct a future of our own imaging, of our own imagination, vain imaging, and then we try to piece it together in the moment and try to make something happen. I'm going to take the past experiences and I'm going to take my projection into the future and I'm going to bring them together. I'm going to try to create something new in this moment. But everything that we create, anything that we try to create in that moment is the opposite of acceptance. Another way to describe acceptance is abandonment. And this has been my living philosophy for the past year. I don't have it nailed down. I still struggle, but abandonment requires us to have trust that even though it's painful and even though I don't know what the future is going to look like, I don't know what's going to happen, I trust that God has my best interest in mind. God knows what he's doing. If I get what I want, listen, the mind of God is omnipotent, omnipresent, right? Beyond space and time. We're trapped in this third dimension of space and time. So our view is very limited. Our preferences are very limited. They're based on limitations. But God, in his omnipresence, knows, hey, this is not the right girl for you. And if you persist in this relationship with her against my will, which is being produced in front of you, which is the breakup, then you're going to struggle because what you resist persists. If he keeps trying, how many times have you seen your friends or maybe even yourself, you are upset with the fact that a relationship is ending and they're not willing to let go of it. So they try to reason with the other person. They try to change themselves for the other person. They try to do all these things that may even work for a moment. It may be like a Band-Aid for a moment and it feels good. Okay, she's not going to leave. I convinced her to stay. But weeks later, months later, it actually gets worse. And rather than, suffering the Band-Aid rip-off pain of the loss of the relationship, and then allowing God to guide you into the next season or the next relationship, you're holding on, you're clinging to something that is dead. I think this is what Jesus means when he says, let the dead go bury the dead. People that are living in the past, people that are living based on information that is no longer valid for the current situation. Those are dead people because there's only one life. There's only one life, there's only one power, there's only one God. And anything that we try to do to thwart that out of our free will to do so will come back and create discord and disorder in our lives perpetually, rather than just accepting the thing that we're struggling with. Abandonment is not about judgment. Acceptance is not about judgment. Abandonment is not about judgment. Acceptance and abandonment is more about curiosity. It's trust in, okay, God's got a bigger plan here. I wish I could keep this job. I wish I could keep this person. I wish I could keep this home. God's got a bigger plan right now. And I don't actually have to figure anything out or to fix anything. I just get to stay open and curious about what God is asking me to do next. Or better yet, what is God bringing to me? Like my teacher said, don't go reach for anything. Don't go reach for anything. So rather than reaching, you sit back and you wait with an open heart. It doesn't mean that you're being lazy and you're not doing anything, but what you're dedicated to is only doing what's in front of you. And God is not going to leave you hanging. If a relationship falls apart, what he's putting in front of you is, an opportunity to look at your fears, to look at the boundaries, look at the stories, look at your self-concept, look at the clinging that you have about that relationship or that job or that thing. And he's very clearly, if we're abandoned, not forcing, not trying, not willing, but if we're truly abandoned, we get to sit in the curiosity of, wow, I wonder how he's going to bring this all through. I wonder what I'm going to be confronted with next. I wonder how he's going to ask me to transcend, to expand my consciousness so that I can overcome this situation in an accepting way. Another framework or way to look at it in terms of like the parts of us that resist. I have a few different frameworks, but one that you guys are very familiar with because I've used it time and again is King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. There are 4 aspects of ourselves, 3 of which are more ego-based. And we tend to ignore the 4th and put all of our effort, all of our thoughts, all of our energy, all of our focus and all of our focus and efforts towards what? Thinking, right? That's the first thing. Usually the first thing we're aware of are our thoughts. And the thoughts usually sound like, this sucks, I don't want to do this, or this is what I think I want, so I'm going to go pursue it, or this shouldn't happen to me, or why does this always happen to me? The thought mind, which is not the mind of God, it's the earthly mind. I'm going to talk about the mind of God in a moment because the mind of God is always present in you. God's plan is always present in you. But our tendency, because of our training, because of our conditioning, is to immediately go to mental strategies. And those mental strategies, although they appear first, are, and let me talk about the archetype in this framework that's associated with it, is associated with the magician, right? We're talking the quadrated psyche, thinking, feeling, being, doing. And the thinking aspect is associated with the warrior. Associated with the magician. The problem is that the magician is only working with materials that he's familiar with. He has no faith. He has no ability to see into the future. And if the ego is strong and unwilling to abandon itself to divine providence, you're gonna be caught in this thinking loop. What should I do? What should I do? Is you're gonna start asking your friends questions, you're gonna ask me questions, you're gonna ask ChatGPT questions, and you're gonna get caught up not in a world of spirit and truth and transcendence and expanded consciousness, but you're gonna be caught up in a world of words. We think in words. I almost said that thinking is objects, right? They say that like thoughts are things, but not so much a thing as like the thought is an image or a picture, but they're usually words. We're talking to ourselves. So you're allowing the letter. I think in one of the Paul's epistles, he says that the letter killeth and the spirit gives life. The letter is, well, what do you make letters? What do you do with letters? You create spells, right? You spell something. You're under your own spell of incessant word processing. The brain becomes a word processor, but that word processor is fueled by the other aspect, the second archetype, which is the lover, which is the heart. And it's always that thought, that strategizing of the thought body, the magician is trying to protect the lover, because the heart is uncomfortable beyond words. There's no words to describe. We have words that describe feelings, but a feeling is truth beyond concept. It's a movement in the body. It's a spontaneous movement in the body, and we can give it a word like a feeling, but there's a discomfort, or there's some sort of feeling. And it's out of those feelings, out of the root system of our feelings, out of the soil of our body, the earth of our body, that the thoughts emerge. Tony Robbins would describe it this way. He would say that we have stories and we have a state. And if you're going to make any progress in life, you got to confront the stories, you got to confront the words, you got to confront the monkey mind that's addicted to and worships symbols, words. And then there's the state. The state is the feeling state. The feeling state neither the mind, the magician will lie in order to protect the truth of the heart. The heart never lies, because whatever is experienced by the heart is. What you do with it could be disordered based on the thoughts that are coming out of the feeling state. And the thoughts are always trying to alleviate the feeling state, justify the feeling state, or discharge the feeling state through thinking. So once again, we're dealing not with the divine, we're dealing with human intellect, we're dealing with human feelings, we're dealing with human will, which is the third of the three that we tend to run to. We run to thinking, we run to feeling, and we run to action. Like I said, in order for me to discharge uncomfortable feelings, I'll do all of those things, but I have sort of a very thin barrier between thoughts, feelings, and actions. I wear my heart on my sleeve. In other words, I'm gonna go do something about it. And I can tell you, man, I've wasted a lot of time doing stuff about uncomfortable feelings that I was strategizing about because I wasn't willing to sit in and accept or be abandoned to divine providence in that situation. So acceptance becomes less of a strategy of mind, heart, and body, right? Because you're even asking, like, Elliott, how do I do acceptance? How do I do acceptance? Acceptance is born out of a consciousness or an awareness or the perception of truth. It's beyond feeling, it's beyond thinking, it's beyond doing anything. It's the being aspect. And that's what being a king in this framework actually means. The royal quality, the sovereign quality, the executive quality within is most powerful when it's abandoned to spirit. The king aspect of a man, everybody, there's so many misconceptions about these archetypes, especially about the king. They think the king is, if they've got a positive view of it, they think the king is this guy that's going to like create things and do things and he's going to be amazing. But Robert Moore, the founder of this idea, said that it doesn't work that way. He says that wherever the king is, order ensues. Another way to look at it that is like when you rest in the kingdom, when you live in the kingdom of God, when you rest in divine providence and have an openness and curiosity to what God's doing, and you wait for the divine action to pour through you, which is not that mystical. The divine action pouring through you is always directed towards what's real. And what's real, the only thing that's real is what's in front of you right now. Either from the thoughts and the feelings and the anxiety to act, or the actual reality that you're facing. Not the inner reality, but the outer reality. It's an acceptance of that loss. It's an acceptance of that circumstance. It's an acceptance of this pain. It's an abandonment like Christ does in the garden to God's sovereign will, with an understanding that his will is always for the greater good. It's usually for our good. God's will is always beneficial ultimately to us. We might not be able to see it. We might be so caught up in the thoughts and the emotions of the circumstance, or we get so busy distracting ourselves with action or numbing ourselves that we never actually experience the fruits of God's beneficent sovereign will. And we're so busy playing God by judging the things that God is putting in front of us, rather than just remaining open. I'll wrap up with this. This is a topic that is super important to me, and one that I think is beginning to trend. There's a guy on YouTube, Alicia Long. I've seen some of his videos, and I know some of you guys have, because there's a lot of crossover on our subscribership, who's been talking a lot about retard maxing. I haven't watched all his videos, but I'm familiar with what he's trying to say. I've seen him say it a bunch of times. And basically he's saying, turn off your fucking mind. Ignore your feelings if they're discordant and unresourceful. And stop trying to do your way in life. Just be. And that means truth. Rest in the truth of who you are in this circumstance and in the power of God to force transcendence. God is always expanding. God's modus of operandi is expansion, which means creation, which means growth. God is constantly growing, even in things that look destructive. Human beings understand this. This is why they do things like slash and burn, right? Like if you own a forest, or if you know what they do in the forestry industry, they'll cut down, they'll burn land, but they burn it down knowing that after the earth is scorched, all the nutrients that are the nitrogen and all the stuff that comes out of the burned plants goes into the soil and creates a richer soil, a much richer soil. And that rich soil is going to set the stage for a crop beyond imagination. The tree is going to be bigger, they're going to be better, they're going to be stronger. But first, something has to be destroyed. If we take the limited view of the ant, or just maybe even the tree, the consciousness of the tree that doesn't understand that, hey, don't worry, you're being torn apart so that greater life can be born through you. So you got to accept it. You got to abandon yourself to it for the greater good. And it's always the case. It's always for the greater good. Jesus Christ, to his death, represented the sacrifice for the greater good. And God didn't abandon him. God absorbed him, brought him in, one with God the Father in spirit, so that there was an expansion, there was growth. As a result, Jesus Christ infused into the life of God by the shedding of his body so that he can live in spirit in and through us for eternity. But he had to face the pain of anticipating the passion and actually suffer in order for that to happen. That's going to be the case. It's always going to be the case. Why do we beat ourselves up in the gym? You know, when you go to the gym that you're tearing down muscle fiber, you're actually breaking your body in order what? So that your body can be rebuilt, so your body can be built up, so your body can become stronger as a result. And that part of it, we do the input by subjecting ourselves to the forces and the pressure and the resistance of weight training, and eating food, of course. But the actual building of the muscle, you're not doing. You just subject yourself to the suffering, and God does the muscle building. When I say God, I mean the autonomic nervous system that God is constantly puppet master over. Because I'm not puppet master over my internal workings. I don't know what my liver's doing, but I know that it's going to work. I don't know exactly what my heart's doing. I'm not saying to my heart that you need to pump a certain amount of liters of blood to certain areas. Like, it just knows, it just does it. And when you abandon yourself, when you retard max, when we accept where we are, we're saying, hey, look, the same God that raised Jesus Christ from the dead, the same God that beats my heart, the same God that placed that spark of life in the embryo of the moment of conception when my parents came together, the God that produced that spark and that sustains my life, is the same God who's going to carry me through the discomfort, even if it's uncomfortable season, right? We have uncomfortable circumstances, we have uncomfortable thoughts, we have uncomfortable moments, but this could be an entire season of discomfort. But all the while, having trust that the pain is God taking things away from you that do not actually belong to you for your greater good, for our greater good. The last piece that I'll leave you with here is I may have mentioned it briefly, but I'm coming back to it, is a book that I read last week while I was away with my son camping. It was a book that I had for quite a few years, but decided to listen to it for the first time. It was called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And in this book, he recounts the over 30 years of living a life of total abandonment to God's will. And it is miraculous. He's constantly confronted with his own self-limited concept, limited self-concept, and challenges that he would rather not confront, people he'd rather not deal with. But in saying yes to all that God offers him, in being abandoned to what shows up in front of him, his life turns out to be a orchestra of amazing events that comes to a peak. I mean, he builds a billion-dollar company while living in the forest as a meditator. It's a crazy story, but this man, the beauty of his life, the journey of his life unfolded the same way a flower unfolds, effortlessly and naturally, and ends up beautifully like the flower. But if he were to interfere, if he were to resist, if he were to allow his boundaries or his limited self-concept or his preferences, his likes and his dislikes, or clinging to things that were being taken away from him, the story would have not have been nearly as beautiful, because the experiment would have been failed every time he jumped in to take action upon objects that have no power. That's an important piece that needs to be understood, fellas. Jesus Christ says that a number of things, one of which is like, it is not I that do these things. He says, not I that will and act, but the Father that does so through me. I'm not getting that exactly right, but he never takes credit. He's always like, I didn't do it. God is doing this through me. And then Jesus Christ in his divinity also goes on and says, I am the branch, you're the vine, right? Or I'm the vine, you're the branch. Either way, separate from me, you can't do anything. If I look at this tree and if I separate one of the branches from the trunk, the leaves on that branch are going to dry up. The branch is going to dry up, it's going to wither up, and it's going to die because it's separate from its life-giving power. There's only one life-giving power. The same life-giving power that's giving life to this tree is the same living that determines how the tree is even going to grow, is the same living force, the same power, the same grace that lives inside you. And it is from that power that our life unfolds. Life unfolds from inside out. It's tough because it's hard to see inside. There's a way to do it, and that's what prayer is. But anytime we project outward, we give power to mammon. We give power to created things. I need a certain amount of money, or I need a certain house, or I need a certain woman, or I need to fix this circumstance. I need to use my will and the power of this created thing to affect change in a world that's eternal, in a world that's omnipotent, omnipresent, eternal. My limited mortality-based mind, I have a dying mind, I have a dying body, and the things of the world which are dying. The US government is dying. The governments all over the world are dying. Anything that comes into life is dying. The tree is dying. This house is falling apart. This relationship will end at some point. The people, circumstances, ideas, hopes, dreams, fears, all of them are constructed by powerless, created things. And when we put our faith in our own will and ability to move the chairs around on the Titanic, we are worshiping mammon. We're worshiping material. We're idol worshipers in the clearest sense, worshiping myself, created thing, worshiping money, a created thing, worshiping a home, a created thing, worshiping a person, a created thing. Anytime we act upon those things with the desire to manipulate and to change, we are idolizing a false god. We're worshiping a false god. And the antithesis to this that requires abandonment or acceptance is not a giving up or a passively watching in frustration and anticipation. It's actually an opportunity to marvel at the one power as it does what it does and wants to do through you. So you're not just accepting the uncomfortable circumstances, you're accepting the power of the omnipotent, beneficent creator of the world to do its great thing through you. We can't do it ourselves. We put trust in the Lord. Done.